Welcome to Vatnajokull ice cap, by volume the biggest in Europe. It is a hard place to reach, but when you get here, it is captivating. On this island of ice and fire, the ice here is discoloured by volcanic ash sprinkled over it by an eruption a decade ago. The glacier can survive that, but what might kill it is us. As the world has warmed, so the ice in Vatnajokull has melted faster and faster. Over the past 90 years, this whole glacier has receded by 5 miles. SNAEVARR GUDMUNDSSON has been studying it for decades.
You've come every year and it's got smaller and smaller and smaller. What does it mean to you?
It's devastating, actually. It's surprising to see how fast this happens. You kind of can't believe how thick the ice must have been about 100 years ago or 130 years ago.
If I came back in 5 years' time, where would I be standing?
Probably on ground.
This would all have gone?
Yeah. The surface is lowering very rapidly. The retreat is about, at this place, is about 100 meters per year. And so in 4 years, yes, you will stand on the soil.
Around him, this glacier is eroding before our eyes in real time, a very obvious victim of climate change.
We know the climate has been warming, so this is a simple physics. Just go to a shop and buy an ice cream and tell us what happens when you go into the heat. It melts.
Iceland is losing so much heavy ice that the country is actually rising by about an inch every year. A nation made by volcanoes is now being shaped by ice.
What strikes you when you come to this glacier is not just the way in which the environment is changing, but the speed at which those changes are happening. And there is evidence of that. Look over there. Those cliffs are about 300 meters tall. And we know that a century ago, this glacier was exactly the same height. But after 100 years of the ice melting, those cliffs now tower above us.
HAUKUR runs trips to the glacier to show the effects, but thanks to the global pandemic and Iceland's introduction of a quarantine for visitors, his business has slipped.
So it's gone from, let's say, half normal in March to none throughout April, May, June, but then the island opened up again in, let's say, July, August, and it was back to almost normal. But after the new rules, it's been, let's say, almost none again. In the winter, we had 10 people working for the company, and sadly, we had to lay everyone off. And that's probably the thing that you sort of regret the most, of seeing the job disappearing. But we believe that this will change at some point. We will be able to recruit again.
Behind him, water is gushing into this huge lagoon. It was only formed 86 years ago. But from here you can see how the glacier is falling. Icebergs that have broken away, and this. An ice cave collapsing as we watched. As long as the world is getting warmer, the glaciers will retreat. The natural order on this remote country will change. In a century or two, Iceland could have very little ice. So in a country where nature is so dominant, the question is how to restore that sense of equilibrium. And to answer that, we need to leave behind the ice and the glacier, but to think a bit more about that most fundamental of things, water. This is a country that's learnt to live with water in all its forms, ice, steam and those millions of litres melting from the glacier. Water is part of the national character here. Iceland gets almost all of its energy from renewable sources, mostly from hydropower. It relies on the glaciers, but that plan only works if the glaciers survive.
The energy production in Iceland has been able to adapt to these changes. You can think of a glacier like a battery. you're draining stored energy from the battery. But it will reach a peak. If we go on business as usual, within 150, 200 years, more or less all glaciers will have disappeared. Iceland will more or less be glacier-free. But I think we still have a chance to mitigate that.
We push on towards the capital. This is a resilient nation, and there's a quiet hope that COVID-19 will cause a new conversation about the future of the world. In Reykjavik's harbour, the tourist vessels are moored up, but the fishing boats are still going out. As the seas change temperature, so the weather has become more volatile and different types of fish are appearing in the waters. So I asked the boss of one of the biggest fishing companies, has COVID distracted people from the challenge of climate change?
I don't think it has distracted us, no. I really don't think so. I think it has made us more aware of how vulnerable we are, how vulnerable the whole ecosystem is. So on the contrary, I think it has made us more aware. It has also shown us how resilient people are.
COVID and climate change are different, but in the minds of many people we spoke to, what links them is a reliance on science, on facts above hyperbole, and maybe that is the legacy this country really wants.
In Iceland we have put a lot of emphasis in listening to scientists during the pandemic, the COVID outbreak. When it comes to climate change, we have also been listening to scientists, and that is something that the whole world needs to do.
Back on the glacier, the ice continues to melt. Even the biggest iceberg's hill will only last a few weeks. This new giant lake, the ice, the cliffs where the glacier once soared, they're all a warning about the fragility of our ecosystem. The question is whether the world is paying attention. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Vatnajokull, Iceland.